No one ever asked the bench whether it liked facing west. The city planners chose the direction years ago, sliding its iron feet into the earth like anchor bolts, declaring sunset view perfect. They never considered that a bench might want to see sunrise instead, or that the flaming clouds of dusk could feel like curtain calls for another silent day. They never thought it might grow lonely, but the bench learned to live with dusk and eventually learned to speak at dusk, too. It had no tongue, so it borrowed the grain lines of its oak slats and the filigree curls of its wrought iron arms. Each evening, as shadows stretched long across the path, it wrote a diary entry, letters forming inside the whorls of wood, sentences weaving between flakes of green paint, paragraphs fluttering like moths around the bolts. No eyes could read that script, no ears could hear it. Yet if a person sat down, set a heartache or a hope beside them, and simply listened, the bench's words would pour, warm and low, directly into the chambers of their heart. Most people hurried by, earbuds sealed, thumbs scrolling. Others paused only to knot shoelaces. Still, every so often, someone would unburden themselves onto the slats, close their eyes, and feel the diary unfurl. The first listener of one notable summer was Clara Mendel. Clara walked with a cane of cherry wood and called herself an old bell that had stopped ringing. She had lost her husband after 53 years and spent each afternoon tracing the same loop through Marigold Park, circling the duck pond like a planet afraid to leave its orbit. On the evening she discovered the bench, a haze of gnats hung over the grass and ivy strained up the lampposts. She lowered herself slowly, wincing at knees that creaked like oarlocks. The bench felt the tremor of loneliness settle beside her and opened its diary. "Dear Dusk," it wrote inside the oak. Today, a robin tried rehearsing autumn notes too early and forgot the melody halfway through. I hummed the missing phrase until she found it again. Funny how creatures can finish each other's songs without speaking. I suppose that is what love is, a duet that survives the silence in between. Clara gasped. The sound didn't enter her ears, it blossomed beneath her ribs. She hadn't meant to hear anything, but the sudden warmth was undeniable. Tears snagged on her lashes. She whispered, "I used to finish Bernard's songs." The bench, encouraged, continued. "Some leaves are only now deciding to turn. If I could speak to them, I'd say, take your time, green is still beautiful, but they will redden anyway, because seasons have their own courage. Tell me, what color is courage in a human heart?" Clara laughed, an unsteady chime, and answered aloud, though no one was near. "Sometimes courage is the color of not turning the page, because you haven't finished the paragraph." She sat there until the lamplight tinged the path gold, then patted the armrest as if squeezing a friend's shoulder. "Thank you," she said, not fully sure whether she was thinking wood, air, or memory. When she rose, her cane felt lighter. The bench was happy. For that one evening, its words had been heard, returned, and tucked gently away inside another soul. It waited, patient as lichen, for the next heart brave enough to listen. 2 nights later, a boy named Mateo slid onto the far end, hoodie up, sneakers scuffed with new city dirt. He had run away from a foster placement that morning and spent the day orbiting bus stations trying to look older than 16. When dusk prowled in, hunger outpaced his bravado. He wandered into Marigold Park in search of a hiding place. The bench offered the anonymity of shadow. Mateo slouched, arms folded, gaze combing treetops for unwelcome silhouettes. His chest felt like a fist squeezed around broken glass. The bench sensed the splinters and began to write. "Dear Dusk. A sapling near the pond grew all on its own last spring. No gardener planted it. The wind simply dropped a seed where it pleased. Now the sapling braces against storms without any older trunk to lean on. Every gust steals a few leaves, yet its roots keep working in secret, threading deeper, determined to belong." Mateo stiffened. The words didn't spook him. They infuriated him because they were true. He yanked off his hood, swallowing a shout. "What do you know about belonging?" he hissed. The bench replied, "Belonging is not a place," it wrote, "but the stubborn decision to stay alive until someone misses you. Sometimes that someone is your future self." Mateo's eyes burned. He hadn't cried since the court removed him from his mother 6 years earlier, and he resented each tear as if the bench were stealing toughness from him. Yet the voice continued, gentle. "A bench holds every stranger for a while," the entry went on. "Some strangers leave gum, others leave poetry carved with keys. I carry it all. You can leave your anger here. Wood is patient." Mateo dropped his face into his hands. His shoulders shook. When he finally rose, the fist inside his chest unfurled a few fingers. He didn't say thank you, but he brushed crumbs from the slats, a silent apology for not having any better words. Late August bled into September. School buses squealed along nearby streets. Acorns thunked the path. The bench wrote each dusk, chronicling squirrels' acrobatics and the soft arguments of old couples racing clouds. Listeners came and went, a postal worker recovering from a panic attack, a violinist who'd just been fired from the community orchestra, a brand new mother whose infant slept strapped to her torso like a vow. Each time, the bench matched its entry to the secret music of the sitter's heartbeat. Each time, someone left a little lighter than they'd arrived. Then came Franklin Sung. Mr. Sung, as the neighborhood children called him, was the park's senior groundskeeper. He maintained rose beds, tightened loose bolts on seesaws, and replaced light bulbs high up in the vintage lamp posts. 42 years of shift whistles had given him arthritic wrists, but he refused retirement because, frankly, the roses would worry about him if he didn't show up. One Tuesday evening, he finished locking up the maintenance shed when a gust carrying the sweet rot smell of fallen crab apples drifted by. He felt an old grief stirring, the memory of his late sister who used to bake crabapple jelly. Seeking to steady himself, he headed for the bench. He'd mended that very bench twice once when vandals cracked a slat, once when rust chewed through a bolt. He knew its every squeak and paint blister. The lip tips splinted, knew every line that kindled a crack. Once, yet he had never sat on it at dusk. When he did, the diary bloomed. Dear Dusk, today, a man fixed a copper spigot on the drinking fountain, and the water's gratitude glittered in the sun. Repairs are poems made of wrenches. But I wonder who mends the mender when his own heart leaks. Mr. Sung inhaled sharply. His calloused hands trembled. He listened as the bench spoke of wisteria vines braiding themselves around the bandstand pillars, of the quiet valor and maintenance, of how stewardship is love that wears work boots. The words flowed over deeds he'd never confessed mattered. Tears rolled, slow and unembarrassed. When the entry finished, he stroked the iron arm as one might smooth a horse's neck. Rest easy, friend, he whispered. The bench glowed with late summer pride. For a while, life continued like that, each dusk. A new intimate conversation delivered in grainy ink only hearts could see. But stories rarely coast forever. October arrived, trailing city council announcements. A renovation plan for Marigold Park was posted on bulletin boards and websites. New exercise stations, a modern playground, Wi-Fi hotspots, a chic cafe where the old tool sheds stood. To make room, several fixtures, aged and non-functional, would be removed. The bench's photograph appeared under that heading, red X through its silhouette. The bench read the notice taped to a lamppost, though reading cost it splinters of courage. That evening, its diary entry began, shakier than ever. Dear Dusk, humans think a bench cannot fear. But tonight, I feel termites of worry chewing the very sentences I write. They will cart me away to a landfill, perhaps burn me for scrap. I have no feet to run, no voice to protest. I am only stories, and stories, I have heard, are easy to erase. A chilly wind rattled fences. The bench wondered whether any heart would sit, in time to hear its plea. Fate sent Clara. She was strolling her loop, scarf bright as cider, when she noticed the trembling letters in the oak. Sitting, she pressed her palm flat on the slat. The words poured. Talk of demolition, of being deemed useless, of dread. Clara's cane thumped in outrage. Nonsense, she said, aloud, eyes fierce behind bifocals. You are hardly useless. She finished listening, then marched, hobbled determinedly, to the community notice board, scanned the renovation details, and jotted the date of the upcoming public hearing. 2 evenings later, Mateo found the bench too. He had re-entered the foster system, this time with a couple who believed more in pancakes than ultimatums. Homework weighed his backpack, but he still visited the park, as if checking that his earlier tears hadn't rusted the iron. He read the bench's worried entry. They can't just junk you, he muttered, voice cracking. You're the only... He stopped, cheeks hot, but shook his head hard. We won't let them. Mr. Sung learned the news from Clara, who caught him pruning roses and recited minutes from the council website. They say the bench is outdated, she snapped, as if comfort goes out of style. Mr. Sung folded his pruning shears like a prayer. He'd thought the same once about an old maple slated for removal until a pair of owls nested there. Now the bench was the owls and he the tree. A plan formed among the listeners, though they'd never all met. Clara typed letters, her granddaughter designed flyers reading "Save the Listening Bench." Mateo taped them to lamp poles between school and park. Mr. Sung gathered maintenance crew signatures. The violinist returned, offering a free sunset concert to draw crowds on the day of the hearing. The new mother spread the word through parent groups. A bench, after all, had held each of them like a provisional harbor. Now harbor dues came calling. The evening before the council vote, the bench wrote perhaps its most bittersweet entry. Not sure anyone would sit because rain bruised the sky purple. Yet Clara arrived under a polka dot umbrella. She sat, umbrella resting against her shoulder like a loyal bird, and heard, "Dear Dusk, thank you for sending advocates in shoes and wheelchairs and sneakers, carrying saxophones and diaper bags and city ordinances. Whatever happens tomorrow, know that these conversations anchored me to the world. If I am carted away, I will carry your footprints pressed into memory like fossils." Claire answered, "Heart to wood, we will fight. Rest." The next night, Marigold Park's small recreation hall filled with citizens and the musty smell of fold-up chairs. Counselors sat on a dais, water cups sweating under fluorescent lights. When Old Bench West Promenade appeared on the agenda, the lead planner expounded on ADA compliance, splinter hazards, and the cost of restoration. He proposed a new steel bench with ergonomic curves and the park logo laser cut into the back. Clara was first at the microphone. She spoke of grief soothed on quiet evenings, of how sometimes a person needed a place that remembered yesterday's weight to help them bear tomorrow's. Tears quavered in her voice but never fell. The bell that had once stopped ringing now tolled, clear. The violinist played next, a brief unaccompanied lament that left the hall suspended in a hush deeper than any speech. Then Mateo approached, hands shoved in pockets. "I know I look like a kid," he began, "but I've been in more homes than some people visit amusement parks. When I first sat on that bench, I wasn't sure I wanted another tomorrow. He swallowed. "It changed that. Maybe it can do that for other kids too." One by one, others testified. A postal worker read a poem the bench had coaxed from her. A jogger described pausing mid-run, learning to breathe not only through lungs, but grief. Mr. Sung ended the sequence, presenting a cost analysis he'd drafted on graph paper. Restoration expenses versus substitution. "Replace bolts, sand, seal, paint," he said. $218.42. Cheaper than new steel. His simple math landed heavier than rhetoric. The council conferred. They could not admit the bench wrote diary entries. Budget meetings lacked categories for enchantment, but they saw in the damp eyes and squared shoulders of constituents that the bench meant something, stubbornly alive. By unanimous vote, Old Bench was reclassified. Historic, inclement, to be restored. Cheers shook the fluorescence. Mateo punched the air. Clara hugged Mr. Sung, cane and all. The violinist played a jig. The postal worker stamped imaginary envelopes on the planner's clipboard. News reached the bench well past midnight, when Clara, Mateo, and Mr. Sung detoured from the hall and marched down the dark avenue with a flashlight. They flanked the bench, spilled details, patted the backrest. The bench could not dance, but the bolts tingled like bursting seeds. It wrote nothing, for even in magic, some feelings overflow language. Winter followed with its steel-gray afternoons, powdered paths, and silence thick as earmuffs. At the bench stayed put, newly repainted, a deep evergreen that made snowflakes pop like confetti. Mr. Sung had even rigged discreet rubber stoppers under the legs so wheelchairs could align smoothly. Often the bench wrote about simple winter glories, how snow curtsies off branches, how children's laughter can melt frost faster than sunlight. Listeners still came, though cheeks reddened quick. Some visitors discovered the diary for the first time, surprised to feel words blooming inside them like hearth fires. One late February dusk, Mateo approached with a stack of college brochures. He'd never thought university belonged in his vocabulary, but a guidance counselor had noticed his knack for mechanical things. He sat, and the bench wrote, "Dear Dusk, a dragonfly larva spends years underwater looking nothing like flight, but the longing for sky hides in every gill. One spring day it climbs a reed, splits its own back, and releases wings it never saw coming. The climb is frightening, the shell tight, but oh, the afterward." Mateo ran a thumb over the glossy brochures. "Guess I better climb," he whispered, grinning tears into the cold. In March, Clara brought a picnic of seed cake and thermos tea to celebrate what would have been Bernard's 81st birthday. She spoke of him freely now, realizing the egg had thinned from molten to honey. The bench listened, its diary entries simply echoing her stories back so she could hear their beauty aloud. Mr. Sung continued maintenance, though officially no longer responsible for the promenade since a younger man took over. He oiled the bench's bolts anyway, leaving notes tucked under an armrest. Be back Thursday with more sealant. Behave. The bench replied each night, praising his quiet monuments until guiltless pride filled his pockets heavier than wrenches. Years turned like pages, and the bench never ran out of ink. Sometimes its entries were haiku brief, a single line about a paper boat somebody lost to the pond. Other times, entire essays coiled through the grain, tackling heartbreak, climate change, the philosophical implications of fireworks. People came from other neighborhoods, then other cities to test the legend. Skeptics arrived with smartphones but left phones silent and heads bowed, unsure how to capture magic except by feeling it. And inevitably, as the bench aged, so did its first confidants. One crisp morning, Clara's cane leaned against the slats unattended. Children found her obituary posted on the same bulletin board that had once threatened demolition. Maple leaves landed on the bench like condolences. At dusk, the bench wrote, "Dear Dusk, tonight I am a tree missing its favorite bird." Yet gratitude hums through the emptiness. She taught me that some silences are just another form of music. Wherever Clara's spirit roamed, perhaps she heard. Miss Young followed years later, his ashes scattered near the rose beds. The bench recorded a diary entry only the roses could hear. They drooped petals in morning, then budded twice as fiercely come spring. Mateo, now a mechanical engineer, installed a small plaque on the bench's back. "Sit, listen with your heart. Stories await." On summer nights, he brought his daughter Emma and perched her on his lap. One evening, Emma whispered, "Daddy, the bench is talking." She pressed a tiny palm to the wood as if high-fiving an old friend. Mateo smiled, heart so full it startled him anew. "Dear Dusk," the bench wrote, "children hear easiest because they haven't forgotten how. But every grown soul still owns that doorway. All they need is to sit, hush the phones, unlock the chest of breathing, and listen. I will be here, oak iron, recollection, hope." Scrawling diaries across every twilight until even twilight's end, and so it remained, a simple green bench facing west, sunset reflecting on its slats like still wet ink. No official map listed it as anything extraordinary, yet people kept coming, each sit a confession, each rising a redemption, and each dusk the bench continued to write, fueled by the certainty that somewhere in the gathering dark a heart would pause, open itself like a book, and read,